All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Whenever we hear about a massive new highway, a giant dam, or a huge mining operation, our immediate focus usually goes straight to the physical environment. We think about the air, the water, the wildlife, but what about the human environment? Today, we are going to completely unpack the rigorous, legally mandated science of socioeconomic studies within environmental impact assessments, or EIAs for short. It's a fascinating look at how we measure the true human cost and benefit of major development.
Think about it. What actually happens to a community when a mega project moves in? Well, before the very first shovel even hits the dirt, we absolutely have to understand the profound ripple effects that a project is going to have on the folks living right there in its shadow. Because a mega project doesn't just alter a landscape, it literally reshapes local economies, daily routines, and the entire social fabric of an area. And this isn't just some guesswork. We use highly specific methodologies to predict, measure, and manage these massive changes to make sure development doesn't just run over vulnerable populations.
To get a grip on this, we'll be walking through 6 key areas today. First, we'll meet the socio-economic expert, then look at gathering the ground truth, predicting the social impact, resettlement and rehabilitation, empowering the community voice, and finally, ensuring quality and compliance.
Let's jump right into Section 1. The socio-economic expert, who essentially acts as the human bridge. To kick off this whole regulatory process, we have to meet our main protagonist. This is the Functional Area Expert, or FAE, certified under the NABIT scheme. Now, what's really fascinating here is the total contrast in their role. On paper, they need serious academic chops. We're talking a master's degree in sociology, economics, psychology, social welfare, or an MBA in rural management. But out in the real world, their core functions are intensely hands-on. They aren't just sitting behind a desk running computer models. No, they are out there in the dirt, conducting baseline surveys, extrapolating census data, drafting resettlement and rehabilitation plans, and standing up in public hearings to directly field community concerns. They literally act as the essential human bridge between the big project proponents and the local citizens.
Which brings us to Section 2. Gathering the ground truth, or building the baseline.
Okay, before anyone can even try to predict future impacts, the FAE has to capture a crystal clear, highly accurate snapshot of the community exactly as it exists today. This whole data hunt starts with the paperwork, what we call secondary data sources. The experts dig into established records like the latest census data, often going back to 2011, and local Gram Panchayat records. This gives them a foundational map of village-level data on populations and literacy rates. But here's the crucial catch. Under strict quality management procedures, you absolutely cannot just use this secondary data as a substitute for primary data. It has to be validated. They literally have to go do site ground truthing to make sure the numbers on the official paper actually match the reality on the ground in the village.
Because honestly, knowing exactly who lives there requires boots on the ground. The experts transition right into primary field methodologies, meticulously documenting every single detail in field logbooks as they go. They start with Step 1, structured interviews using detailed questionnaires. Then they zoom out for Step 2, focus group discussions, or FGDs, to really capture the community dynamics. And finally, Step 3 involves participatory rural appraisal techniques. This is super cool because it actually gets the community directly involved in mapping out their own resources and social structures.
And the sheer volume of data they collect during this phase, it is staggering. Experts map out absolutely everything. Look at the key attributes we track. We're talking demographics, like population breakup and family size. They track land ownership, income, and occupations to understand the local economy. They audit local infrastructure, down to the distance to the nearest paved road or electricity access. They log drinking water sources and drainage, and dive deep into education and health data, noting things like literacy dropout rates or prevalent disease patterns like malaria. They even track complex outmigration and seasonal migration patterns. Basically, they are building a deeply comprehensive picture of the community's current quality of life.
Moving right along to Section 3, predicting the social impact, often called the SIA.
So how do we translate this massive baseline of data into actual, concrete predictions? Well, once the baseline is locked in, experts shift into the social impact assessment, or SIA, phase. Now, if our project involves acquiring land, say for a massive open-pit mine or a huge new infrastructure corridor, under the 2013 Land Acquisition Act, widely known as the RFCTLARR Act, an SIA isn't just some nice-to-have suggestion. It is a strict, undeniable legal mandate. It legally forces developers to look past their engineering plans and confront the true social costs of their physical footprint.
And here we really have to impartially confront the dual reality of these megaprojects. It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, yes, they absolutely bring substantial potential positive impacts. We see direct and indirect job creation, bumps in local land values, and improved health infrastructure funded through corporate social responsibility, or CSR, initiatives. But on the flip side, they carry severe potential negatives. We're talking about the irreversible loss of agricultural land, physical displacement of families, pollution risks, and the invisible yet totally devastating breakup of traditional social networks. The expert's job is to forecast all of this without bias.
Let's look at Section 4, Resettlement and Rehabilitation, which is all about finding resolution.
You know, when development fundamentally turns a community upside down, a meticulous resettlement and rehabilitation, or R&R, becomes the ultimate safety net. You can't just displace people, hand them a check, and wish them luck. The law actually makes a vital distinction here between project-affected families, or PAFs, who maybe lose a portion of their land or livelihood, and project-displaced families, or PDFs, who physically lose their homes and have to move entirely. For both groups, the planning components are robust. It covers monetary compensation that factors in both the land value and a solatium, which is like a hardship bonus. If government land is available, there are land-for-land provisions. It also mandates fully equipped residential sites with basic amenities like water, electricity, and drainage, plus vital displacement and subsistence allowances, and long-term livelihood restoration like skill training to help folks rebuild their economic independence.
Now this part is absolutely crucial. The law dictates that very specific provisions must be mapped out to protect the most vulnerable groups. Think about it. Standard compensation usually relies on land ownership. But what about landless laborers who work the land but don't own it? What about single women, the elderly, or disabled and orphaned individuals? The framework legally mandates that these specific groups get additional specialized safety nets. And for SC/ST families, there are even stricter provisions. They require special mapping and prior consent to ensure we don't accidentally erase cultural heritage or vital rights.
All of this leads us to Section 5, Empowering the Community Voice Through Stakeholder Consultation. Of course, none of this planning happens behind closed doors. The community absolutely must be actively consulted. The cornerstone of these mechanisms is the mandatory public hearing. Through village panchayat meetings, focus groups directly with the project-affected people, and consultations with local business owners, the FAE gathers the authentic voice of the community. Every single concern raised and every promise the project proponent makes is officially recorded. And this isn't just for show. This legal record is intensely scrutinized during the final appraisal by the State Expert Appraisal Committee, the CAC, and the Central EAC to guarantee those commitments are legally binding.
And to guarantee long-term success, a strict post-project monitoring timeline is set up. Basically, once the project breaks ground, the socio-economic team doesn't just pack up and go home. Nope. There are required quarterly checks tracking employment status and health impacts. Then there are half-yearly assessments to see if those livelihood restoration programs are actually working in the real world. Finally, there's an annual survey measuring overall community perception. It creates this continuous, reliable loop of accountability. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, Ensuring Quality and Compliance, basically the QMS anchor.
So, at the end of the day, how do we know the experts actually did the work accurately and honestly? Well, that's where the Quality Management System, or QMS, steps in for audit compliance verification. Internal and external audits are conducted to meticulously verify the fieldwork. Auditors are asking the hard questions. Did the primary surveys actually hit that required 10% sample size of households? Did you make sure the data was gender disaggregated so women's specific socioeconomic realities were captured? Are the official gram sub minutes attached to prove these consultations really happened?
There is a really powerful core philosophy pulled straight from Appendix B of the Quality Management System. It's simple: saying what we do and doing what we say. Now that might sound like a basic bumper sticker, but in the incredibly high-stakes world of environmental impact assessments, it carries massive ethical and legal weight. It totally prevents pencil whipping and ensures that these baseline surveys and elaborate resettlement plans aren't just works of fiction.
Under the NABET scheme, there are strict documented procedures, specifically B6 and B7, that lock all this integrity into place. Procedure B6 tightly controls the collection of primary data, insisting on proper statistical sampling and structured interviews. Procedure B7 governs the interpretation of secondary data, mandating that older census records are authenticated and cross-verified on site. Working together, these procedures guarantee that the socioeconomic forecast rests on an unshakable, verified foundation.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this delicate question to chew on. How do we perfectly balance the urgent need for national development with the profound responsibility of local preservation? Megaprojects are a reality of modern civilization. They drive our economies forward. But, as we've seen today, through these rigorous, legally mandated frameworks, from the early baseline data hunts to those comprehensive resettlement protections, we genuinely strive to ensure that the human beings standing in the path of progress aren't simply swept aside. Instead, they are heard, protected, and ultimately uplifted. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.